We should never take impeachment off the table. We should never take, where we see law breaking, we should never take accountability off the table.
This nonsense from like AOC that he should be impeached is just absurd. Absurd. There's no... Okay, get back to me when you've read the Constitution or get a law degree, because you sound like an absolute...
Megyn Kelly dropped a blow so powerful it felt like the whole stage flipped upside down. This wasn't just sharp commentary, it was a demolition, the kind you'd expect at the climax of a thriller. AOC, normally steady under the spotlight, suddenly seemed as if she'd walked into a firestorm with nothing more than a flimsy shield. And the twist? Nobody saw it coming. After this showdown, her image will never carry the same weight. Kelly didn't just turn up the pressure, she ignited the entire arena. What unfolded wasn't a calm exchange. It was a heavyweight battle where one side looked completely unprepared. Kelly went beyond poking at cracks in AOC's polished image. She ripped straight through it, as recklessly precise as a child tearing apart gift wrap.
There is absolutely no ground to impeach the president. He 100% was within his constitutional authority and his congressionally authorized authority to do what he did on Saturday. Okay, but as for whether it's a good idea, that's a debate we should be having. And look, you know, if we could get congressional approval of the specific action, fine, I'm okay with that too. If you want to bring it to Congress, go ahead and see how that goes. I don't think it's necessary, but...
In an instant, AOC wasn't the lively Instagram personality, glass in hand, chatting up her followers. Under Megyn Kelly's scorching spotlight, she froze, like someone caught off guard when the Wi-Fi suddenly cuts out. The shift was harsh. Her trademark confidence vanished, replaced by a silence that carried more weight than any speech. The blunt reality? AOC's image thrives on energy and charisma, not depth or detail. But Kelly doesn't play in that arena. She comes in with sharp, precise strikes, the kind that can rattle even the boldest politician into questioning whether their big message is more show than substance. That's exactly what unfolded. AOC came armed with her usual mix of sweeping statements, fiery delivery, and a flashy metaphor or two, but Kelly refused to be impressed. Piece by piece, she dismantled the performance until AOC looked less like a commanding congresswoman and more like a student stumbling through a book report on a story she hadn't actually read.
Let's check in on AOC and see what she has to say.
Any quick reaction on what's going on with Elon Musk and President Trump on Twitter right now?
Oh man, the girls are fighting, aren't they? I think this breakup we've been seeing a long time coming, but we'll see what the impacts are of it legislatively.
Okay. You're so cool referring to them as the girls. She's above it all, Ben. That's what she's trying to telegraph. You see, she's the adult in the room, the one out there who does a preacher accent. And she leans into her fake Latina accent.
Before we go further, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. The brilliance of Megyn's strategy was its simplicity. It was sharp, calculated, and devastating. She didn't waste time tossing out cheap shots. Instead, she came armed with evidence, razor-edged arguments, and insights that shredded AOC's points faster than silk in a spin cycle. And the crowd, they weren't just entertained, they were stunned. Debating AOC is one thing. Watching Megyn calmly dismantle her entire persona was another. It felt like watching someone take apart IKEA furniture without the instructions. Frustrating, ruthless, and strangely satisfying. Here's the shocker. AOC, usually untouchable, the darling of late night shows, the queen of viral Twitter threads, the anti-capitalist icon walking in high-end sneakers, suddenly looked ordinary. Her brand has always been curated with flawless precision, polished so perfectly it makes a tech launch event seem unprepared. But Megyn didn't just reveal the cracks, she amplified them, turning every flaw into a high-definition spectacle that no one could miss. In that moment, AOC's polished voice of the future persona collapsed. Not like Destiny realized, but like an off-key Broadway audition awkwardly broadcast on live television. And here's the real twist. This wasn't even about policy anymore.
Radical left, who's gone beyond all the identity issues. I mean, don't get me wrong. The person I'm going to show you is 100% wrapped in all of them, but like genuinely believes the Hitler fascist stuff, like is like distraught because they really think Hitler just got reelected. Most of them were just pretending, but then there are the ones who genuinely believe it, like AOC.
We are about to enter a political period that will have consequences for the rest of our lives. Donald Trump has talked about turning the military on U.S. citizens that he deems his domestic political enemy.
Meghan didn't waste energy sparring over talking points. Instead, she went straight for the performance itself, the part no one else dared to touch. She yanked back the curtain on the theatrics, the sweeping hand gestures, the choreographed pauses, the bursts of emotion that felt less spontaneous and more rehearsed. It was like pulling the mask off a magician and discovering not a genius, but someone fumbling with props and a smoke machine. And once exposed, it couldn't be unseen. The reaction was priceless. Half the room sat frozen, jaws dropping, while the other half broke out in laughter. Somewhere, a die-hard fan was probably still defending AOC's brilliance, even as she was being dismantled live on stage. But loyalty couldn't change the reality. The damage was permanent. Meghan showed that the illusion wasn't just fading. It looked like AOC was trying to return it for a refund, and the timing couldn't have been sharper. AOC had been riding high on influencer-style politics, where a viral comeback online gets mistaken for real legislative firepower. Meghan's strike didn't just hit hard, it landed at the exact moment when the spotlight was brightest, leaving no room to escape.
Has been out there on this, I don't know if it's campaign trail, I don't know what we're calling it, but this like fight the oligarchy tour with Bernie Sanders, from which, venue to venue, she travels first class, sipping her champagne, in the first class cabin as the losers and plebs walk by to coach. They're the ones she's really fighting for. And she's decided to ramp up her anti-Trump rhetoric in a way she's done before, but that could be deeply problematic for her if Trump actually decides to pay some attention.
When Meghan called her out, the truth hit with force. Snappy comebacks only work if there's real weight behind them. Without substance, it's just empty sound, plenty of movement, but no impact. In other words, pure political jazz hands. Here's the kicker. AOC probably thought she could run her usual playbook, claim victimhood, rally her supporters, toss in a few hashtags, and let social media do the heavy lifting. But this wasn't the same old script. Politicians get criticized on policies all the time. What they almost never face is someone exposing the performance itself. That's where Meghan struck gold. And in politics, nothing tanks a reputation faster than looking like the desperate try-hard in the room. By the time it was over, Meghan hadn't just won a debate. She had flipped the way people viewed AOC entirely. Once you see that the voice of the people is more of a stage act than a stateswoman, you can't unsee it. It's like realizing your favorite action hero was leaning on a stunt double the whole time.
There's a report today that AOC may be getting ready to run for president, that her team is looking, and I know you've said she could potentially do it, but her team is looking at maybe Senate. Chuck Schumer is, I think, going to be 78 when he runs for re-election. That's really old, and the Democrats seem to get that now. Or she might just go for president. And at the same time, this happened today. The Republicans in the House introduced a resolution to honor Charlie Kirk. It condemns the murder.
And here's the wild part. Meghan wasn't even at full throttle. This was her on autopilot, coffee in hand, casually dismantling a politician like it was part of her warm-up routine. Now picture what would happen if she actually unleashed her full arsenal. That wouldn't just be exposure, it would be a political demolition, delivered with a smile, because once Meghan puts you under that kind of spotlight, the internet never forgets. Memes swarm every timeline, late-night comedians rush to turn it into punchlines, and somewhere, a stressed-out group of interns scrambles to scrub clips from trending pages. Spoiler alert, it never works. At this point, AOC's only real play might be to lean into the theater completely. Go full Broadway, songs, jazz hands, the whole performance. At least then people might laugh with her instead of at her. But after Meghan's takedown, the illusion didn't just crack, it collapsed in real time. The craziest part was how fast it happened. Minutes earlier, AOC looked untouchable. The digital heroine idolized by her fans, the icon who could do no wrong. But under Meghan's unforgiving spotlight, that myth evaporated instantly.
Of course he's lying and abusing and manipulating the stock market too. When he talks about rapists and criminals, he should look in the mirror.
Okay. Clearly saying that Donald Trump is a racist. Rapist. She also thinks he's a racist. He's all the ists. But here, she's in deep trouble because he was not found liable for rape, and George Stephanopoulos just had to pay ABC some $15 million to President Trump to settle a defamation lawsuit.
She could stumble through a policy explanation, stretch metaphors until they sounded like recycled fortune cookie lines, or throw out some clunky comparison about billionaires devouring planets, and the crowd would still cheer like she'd just finished a Broadway finale. But Megyn wasn't there to clap. She popped the balloon, and all that hype escaped in one long, humiliating hiss. That's the brutal truth about performance politics. It only works as long as the audience buys the act. With pinpoint accuracy, Megyn yanked the wires out for everyone to see. Picture AOC launching into one of her signature speeches. The wide-eyed delivery, the dramatic pauses, the hands slicing the air like she's conducting a phantom orchestra. Usually the crowd laps it up, but with Megyn exposing the routine, every gesture suddenly looked staged, mechanical, almost robotic. It was like watching a magician repeat the same card trick after you already know where the ace is hidden. The first time, it's dazzling. By the 10th, it's cringeworthy. And in that moment, you could almost see AOC realizing it herself. Her entire persona rests on control, controlling the energy, the narrative, and exactly how every move lands with the audience. But under Megyn's spotlight, that control slipped away, leaving nothing but the performance stripped bare.
Then there's AOC, who said the following.
And beliefs were ignorant, uneducated, and sought to disenfranchise millions of Americans. Far from the working tirelessly to promote unity, unquote, asserted by the majority in this resolution.
Then she voted no. She refused to join in the resolution. Consequences to her politically for doing that?
I would love to have her run for president of the Democratic side. It's a contrast, right? What you see is what you get. If that's what you think can lead this country, is that where your values are? Is that what you think will continue to promote American freedom and liberty?
Once Megyn stripped away that control, the entire performance began to unravel. In seconds, AOC no longer looked like the bold revolutionary of a rising generation. She looked like a nervous drama student forgetting lines halfway through a play. Megyn dismantled her act calmly, gesture by gesture, and with every point, the cracks spread wider. AOC's strength has always been framing her opponents as cartoon villains, fuel for her narrative, fire for her brand. But what happens when the opponent doesn't play along? Megyn simply stood there, composed, smiling, pointing out that the Emperor wasn't leading a movement at all, just flailing with empty theatrics in a hollow room. There was no fiery clash, only silence and the slow hiss of credibility deflating. Her most loyal defenders rushed to the rescue. Twitter lit up with threads longer than term papers, each one twisting itself into knots to insist she wasn't really exposed, that Megyn was unfair, or that none of it mattered. But here's the irony. The harder they fought to spin it, the more obvious the damage became. Because if it takes a 40-part dissertation to argue someone wasn't embarrassed, that's the surest sign they absolutely were.
The reason this is relevant is because a congresswoman who you may know as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been telling us for years that she is from the Bronx. And recently she had a fight with President Trump over tweet, text, truth, whatever. And she played tough and said, "Oh, don't you mess with me. I'm a Bronx girl and we eat Queens boys for breakfast," because that's where Trump was raised, in the Queens. And respectfully, AOC. Well, that's real cute, except she only lived in the Bronx until she was age.
Meanwhile, Megyn just leaned back and let the chaos play out, sipping her coffee like a queen, surveying the wreckage of a battlefield. That's the genius of a takedown done right. You don't need a follow-up when the first strike keeps echoing all on its own. The clips replay, the memes multiply. Every new conversation drags AOC's performance back under the harsh light, and with each replay, it looks worse than the last. It was almost poetic, like a gymnast landing a flawless triple flip, only to faceplant during the victory wave. Nobody remembers the flips, they remember the fall, and this fall echoed everywhere. Even the media reaction was telling. Outlets that usually bend over backwards to shield AOC suddenly muttered, well, maybe she does rely a little too much on theatrics. Oh, now they see it. After years of staged moments, overblown gestures, and Instagram sermons, it took Megyn shining a neon spotlight before anyone dared admit it.
Fourth place, not necessarily fourth place. This is just, I'm going to start with as the fourth possibility, but I've got four total and you'll decide what order they go in. I'm going to kick it off with AOC. Okay. Her real name is Sandy Ocasio. This is what she went by her entire life, Sandy Ocasio. And only when she decided to run for office did she decide to suddenly become Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and lean into her Puerto Rican history, where her mother was born in Puerto Rico, but her father was born in New York City. And she decided to tell us sob stories about how she's from a poor family and she was living, paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, she was raised in a Tony part of Westchester called Yorktown.
And then came the memes. That's where the real wrecking ball swung. The internet doesn't deal in nuance. It runs on punchlines. And Megyn served them by the platter. Clips of AOC's frantic hand gestures now looped over circus music. Her dramatic pauses, once hailed as powerful, replayed as painfully awkward silences. Screenshots froze her mid-expression with captions like, Oscar-worthy drama, zero policy substance. Once the internet latches on like that, credibility isn't just dented, it's roasted, vacuum sealed, and filed into the archives forever. From that point on, every sweeping motion looked fake, every pause sounded rehearsed, and every emotional appeal came off less like politics and more like a desperate audition monologue. That's when the facade fully cracked. Supporters scrambled to patch it up, media outlets quietly admitted what they'd always known, and Megyn stood tall as the one who proved the emperor wasn't just without clothes. He was flailing with jazz hands under the spotlight. And here's the final twist. This wasn't even a clash of equals. No grand duel, no thunderous applause, no dramatic showdown. Just the slow sinking realization that the act had run its course. The wires were visible, the props were obvious, and the performer looked like they were trying far too hard. That's the kind of demolition no one else had ever pulled off until Megyn did.